Hi guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another Retro Adventures. And at the end of another week and the end of another poll, we've got the narrowest of narrow wins for DNA DOA for Shadowrun First Edition. Now this was the very first Shadowrun adventure ever published, and is by Dave Arneson, the co-creator of Dungeons & Dragons. I really like it, but we'll have a look at that on the desktop in a wee second. Now as usual, I'll be back at the end of the video with some other channel related stuff and some other poll related stuff. But if you'd like to help the channel out, or you'd like to see these videos a week early, which is very useful because the poll that I'm talking about at the end of the video will have actually closed by the time this video goes out to the wider audience. Only Patreons get to see it as the poll launches. So if you want to take part in that poll, there's a Patreon in the description down below. You can click on that, you can see these videos a week early, you can get involved and you can help us out, and it'd be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at DNA DOA. So, this is DNA DOA, a first edition Shadowrun adventure which came out in 1989 by Dave Arneson, the co-creator of Dungeons & Dragons. And this is the very first adventure published. I thought it was actually Mercurial, but checking the module number 7301, this predates it. So this is the very first adventure published for Shadowrun. Now, when it came out, it was criticised in reviews in, I think it was Gamemaster International magazine and a few others, that it was too Dungeons & Dragons-like. And I can understand those criticisms. The part of the adventure takes place in the sewers, and there are random encounter tables in there. Very Wandering Monsters for D&D-like. And the breaking into the headquarters or the research quarters of a corporation is kind of like a dungeon raid. There are monsters in there, things to be fought. It is fairly Dungeons & Dragons-like in the initial section, but there's so much more in here. Now, obviously, this is spoiler video because I'm going to be going into details, so if you intend to play this, turn off now. But going into the details, for example, one of the players in the adventure is going to be turned against the rest of the party. Loved ones of theirs have been kidnapped, and they are working against the rest of the group. They are working for a rival for the people who hired them. So the players have an inside man corrupting against them, which is kind of different. I've never seen that in a Shadowrun adventure, and it really suits the cyberpunk type setting. But more than that, this is a very early look at the way Shadowrun could have gone. Shadowrun early on was very much about racism. The orcs, trolls, elves, dwarves were mistreated. There was a large thing with the version of the Ku Klux Klan, the Humanist Polyclub in Shadowrun, which hates metahumans and just likes pure humans. They even hate wizards, because they're not quite human either. But that was a large part of first edition Shadowrun, that the metahumans were looked down upon. And with some mixing around, you can see which racial groups they fit into. You know, large hulking orcs and trolls probably are taking the racism which would have before been targeted towards blacks. Your dwarves are hard-working but very cliquish, so they're probably Asians. And your elves are working together, they've got their own country, they look out for themselves. They're probably taking the racial abuse aimed at Jewish people. So the different meta-types kind of pick up different types of racism. It makes it clear in the original rulebook that this is seen, you know, why would you have problems with that black guy over there when there's a 10-foot troll looming over you? A meat-eating orc is trying to steal your job. And obviously he's much stronger than you genetically, so he's going to take those low-paid jobs away from you. So people hate on the meta-types. Now, in the background of Shadowrun, there's a huge event called the Night of Rage. Because when the meta-types were coming out, goblinization occurred, and over the matter of a few weeks or months, a large chunk of the population suddenly mutated into orcs and trolls. While elves and dwarves are born that way and have been born that way for a number of years, orcs and trolls suddenly appeared. and they were herded up into warehouses. And during the Night of Rage, normal folk, normal humans, turned on them, and warehouses full of these segregated groups, like in ghettos during World War II in the rise of the Nazis, they were burned to death. And part of this adventure set in the ruins of the warehouses where that occurred, and includes some survivors of that and how they've set themselves up separately. So there's a massive racial divide being put into the background of this, which was kind of core to the rulebooks, but was never picked up on further down in adventures, and has been pretty much dropped by more recent editions of Shadowrun. The final part of the racism baked in is that the DNA of the title is a genetic disease which the players are being hired to steal. Now, this can be used to create new meta types, but the racists of the world are trying to steal this. They're the people who are blackmailing one of the characters. They are the people who are trying to steal this research without sending in their own team by getting it just from the players, so they can release this disease to wipe out all elves, dwarves, orcs, and trolls. They want to genocide all of those races. And that's very deep for a Shadowrun adventure. It's way different to the ordinary, oh, I'm trying to rescue a band from a corrupt corporation because they speak the truth to power, or I'm working for so-and-so and I need to liberate this documentation. You're basically talking about trying to stop a genocide, and you're dealing with people who are kind of involved in an earlier genocide. This is very, very heavy material for a Shadowrun adventure. Anyway, I've talked on for ages, and we haven't even opened the book, so let's have a look at the back cover first of all. It began as a simple data steal, a Shadowrun into the Aztechnology database. Somewhere it went wrong, and now you've lost the goods, lost your contacts, and your only chance is to get out of Seattle fast. There's just one problem. The only way out leads through the heart of the deadly underworld, a dark labyrinth beneath the city where your first move may be your last. Dave Arneson, co-creator Dungeons & Dragons, has created a Shadowrun adventure fraught with danger and intrigue. DNA DOA includes all the information necessary for Gamemasters to launch a party of Shadowrunners headlong into the nightmare world beneath the streets of Seattle. Now, the cover is absolutely lovely. I really like the coloration of this one. Some Shadowrun books were a bit odd. Inside, even though it's 1989, the publishing standards are very, very nice. The book's very clear. There's lots of information, and the artwork is very nice. And we kick off with a short story about the Night of Rage, about orcs being herded up into a warehouse, and then riots outside setting fire to it, and them escaping into the underworld. Basically, they find a shopping centre which is buried under the streets and abandoned, and they take it over, and that's a new orc colony, and that will come into the adventure later. And we've got the introduction talking through the general plot synopsis, because this is a Shadowrun split over 2 parts. So first of all, we've got the meeting. So the players are meeting the Mr. Johnson and setting up the deal. Got all the information they gather, what equipment they can get access to beyond their own. Scouting around, if you want to surf the Matrix and find out what digital information, or if you've got a mage and they're doing astral observation. And then you're off into the sewers. Now, as I said, this is a random encounter table. So you roll 3d6 and you encounter one large rabid cat, or 1 or 2 ghosts, 1 to 6 orcs, a vampire. Just random encounters in it, which is kind of cool. It's not the most well thought out. It is totally random, but it's a decent way of handling what is basically just a trek through the sewers. They are going through there, and then they have a chemical which interacts with the concrete and allows them to tunnel through into the facility. Inside the facility, they find that it's gone into lockdown. The very disease that they are aiming to steal information on has been released, and it is affecting everybody in there. The place is on lockdown, so there's no way in or out except the one that they've created into the sewers. Going through it, there's various encounters with mutated creatures and mutated people. So, as well as all the rooms, as well as some NPCs who are being affected by this disease, we've got things like giant cockroaches, flesh worms, giant millipedes. We've got half tiger, half human hybrids, half human, half wolf hybrids, half human, half bear hybrids, which you can fight, or these still have a degree of sentience, so you can bargain with them or otherwise interact. Now, the artwork, as I said, is nice, but by God, it's 80s. There's just something which screams 80s, and there are a couple of pictures later on which just throw me back decades, but we'll come to those. Then we've got escape. So you think you're getting out of the Shadowrun here. You've broken into Aztechnology, one of the biggest corporations in the world, and you're escaping. But you're going straight into where your contacts have been killed off, and the racists, the Alamos 20,000, are turning up to steal your data. And of course, that's where the inside man, the one of the Shadowrunners who has been blackmailed, may turn on the other players. As everything goes off, the players flee into the warehouses at the docks, which have been burned down, because that's where the orcs in the short story at the beginning had been herded, and then put to the fire. And they have a chance of encountering some orcs in the warehouse who will help them flee down into the orc colony. Now, of course, that can go wrong as they're fleeing from people attacking them and they see people moving in the dark. They may gun down some of the orcs who are willing to help them, which is especially worse because those orcs are children. But anyway, if they are doing well, they will end up with the orcs, and the orcs are willing to help them. But some of the orcs themselves have been kidnapped by Aztechnology for experimentation using this virus that they've stolen. And the orcs are willing to help them if they go back into the unaffected part of the research base and rescue. So there's a second Shadowrun to help out the people who are helping you. So you're going to the rescue. We've got the computer networks, the layouts of the alpha section, and various encounters, different people who are in there. Obviously, there's a big disaster going on because the other part of the base has a disease released. Aztechnology, they're trying to hide it from their bosses. They're trying to cover it up. So chaos reigns across. Plus the fact that there's been a Shadowrun into the other part already that night. You're returning very, very quickly. But they can rescue the orcs and return their captives. There's an interaction between the head of research, if you bring them, with the head of the orcs, who know each other. And then they head for a safe house. And of course, as all Shadowruns do, they get tracked down and chaos reigns. And things are being tidied up. Martin Honecker is the head of the Alamos 20,000, so very much white power. Honecker being a name which makes me think of South Africa. So a white South African. We've got all the sort of background information about the research park, Biogene Technologies, who are the people who hire them. Lots of information they can research before the Shadowrun, all given here for the Gamemaster. We've got a cast of characters, so if you just want to use pre-generated characters, we've got Johnny Clean here, we've got Louise Frost, we've got Andrew Shaleen. Then we've got non-player characters, so the head of the orcs here, and Dr. Carol Owens, the head of research. Now that just screams 1980s. Oh, it was a decade that fashion forgot. And he just looks terrible as well. He just looks pure 80s. John Walker, who is your contact for Biogene, who stands a good chance of being killed off by racists. Got various standard security guards, polyclub members, technicians, and we've got wrapping up at the end here. So basically, the players will be wanted. Aztechnology have a good idea that they broke into their compound, so want them dead. The racists want them dead, the Alamos 20,000. Biogene just wants to forget about everything because it went so badly wrong. But once they've given it time to settle, their credit will go up. People will respect the players a lot because they're the guys who did a heist, in fact, 2 heists against Aztechnology, the big bad guys of the underworld. So they will have so much respect and they'll be able to get paid more in the future. And we've got the Karma Awards. Then very at the back, we've got some player handouts. So we've got some news digests, data files, DNA data file extract 2, talking about the wolf sapiens, tiger sapiens, and bear sapiens. Now, DNA DOA is a fantastic adventure at the beginning of Shadowrun, but I don't think it works terribly well further on. You would have to rewrite sections of it to fit it into the 2070s, when 40 years have gone past since the Night of Rage. It doesn't seem believable. In fact, it's not believable, because the orcs only have like a 40-year lifespan. So where the orc in this is an old man, because orcs age so quickly. Where was he? You can see he's a grizzled old man. He's actually only in his late 30s, early 40s. But that is ancient for an orc. The chance that he would reach 60 or 70 by the time of modern Shadowrun is extremely unlikely. That warehouses from the Night of Rage would still be sitting abandoned is extremely unlikely as well. So historically, fitting into the 2040s, 2050s era of Shadowrun, this is a fantastic adventure. But apart from that, I think it's just a look at how Shadowrun could have gone, with it being more about race and more about how you treat people despite the way they look. It would have been a fantastic moral situation for Shadowrun to take, rather than the fun romps with elves machine gunning down dragons that we've got today. So that was DNA DOA, a fantastic adventure for Shadowrun, and one which shows a number of the early concepts which Shadowrun was really based about, which have been abandoned as editions have gone on further, and it's moved away from that initial concept. Great stuff. Now that narrowly won the poll by 1% on 31% of the poll. And that's a single vote, because we got exactly 100 votes this month. And it was only 1% ahead of Unbound from MechWarrior, also by FASA. Now, MechWarrior's a much more obscure system, so I was very, very surprised to see it do so well. So I might cover that in a video again, or the next Retro Adventures I'll put it back in, if I haven't got around to making a video by that point. Behind that, on 18%, is Tales from the Ether by Games Designers Workshop for their Space 1889 steampunk setting. 5 different adventures set in different areas of that universe. Great stuff, I really liked it, but alas, not this time. And behind that, there was Survival of the Fittest on 15% for Cyberpunk, but not a pure Cyberpunk, for the alternate world of Night's Edge, where vampires, werewolves and psychics exist. It would have been fascinating to look through that, as I bought this adventure a long time ago and I've never really given it more than a skim. And finally, in last place, was The Key of Deliriad for Slay Industries by Nightfall Games. Now, Nightfall Games did not publish a lot of adventures for Slay Industries, despite it being a pretty popular system at the time. But it would have been fascinating to look through, but again, alas, not this time. It will go into a future poll and we will cover it at some point in the distant future. Anyway, they're all cleared out of the poll, and we've got a fresh set of games going in for a retro RPG. So first of all, we've got the Stargazers Tribe book for Werewolf the Apocalypse by White Wolf. Now, the Stargazers book is covering that particular tribe of werewolves, and the books that White Wolf published were absolutely fantastic. They had a colour comic area at the front, leading into many detailed parts about the tribes and different aspects of them. Really great stuff. Second up, we've got World Book 2 Atlantis for Rifts. Now, Atlantis is a common setting in different role-playing games, but Rifts handles it very, very different, and it's completely unique to Rifts. So it's a fascinating book to go through, and very much sets the tone of Rifts from that point onwards. Very, very pivotal in the evolution of that game. Next, we've got Monsters, Muties and Misfits for Deadlands Hell on Earth. We covered the book for Deadlands D20, which was basically its monster manual. Well, this is the same, but for Deadlands Hell on Earth, their post-apocalyptic western setting. Then we've got The Brotherhood, The Cleansing Flame of the Cardinal, which is a long name and it doesn't exactly let your tongue flow over it. It's a bit of a stumble. Now, it's for Mutant Chronicles. Now, it's a cyberpunk near-future sort of setting where travel between planets are possible but not outside the star system, because the star system's sealed off against demons, and demons have started going in as that barrier has been breached. So corporations control of it, like many cyberpunk settings, but also religion, the Brotherhood, the Cardinal, have a big influence on life because they're the ones that can fight off the demons. A fascinating little book. And finally, we've got Karma for Slay Industries. Now, I've covered Karma before, briefly as part of my Slay Industries video, way back when I started the channel off. But that's really not doing justice to the book, because Karma is a fantastically thoughtful and detailed book, really in the tone of that. Although my copy is very much falling apart, because Nightfall Games really couldn't seem to get their binding together at all, so most of their books are just a few pages inside the cover. Otherwise, it's absolutely fantastic. Anyway, let's see how the poll goes, let's see which one wins. Another channel related stuff. Well, the Discord I've actually started being active on. We're trying to set up a game to play, and it's looking at the moment like it's going to be sessions of Cyberpunk Easy Mode, the adventure that I covered the other week in my video about Cyberpunk Easy Mode. Because there's pre-generated characters, it'll be easy to get people into it, and I think it'll be quite a lot of fun to go and play something pretty darn new. After that, we'll go on to other games, but this is a really good start because there's pre-generated characters, so people can just choose something and get in and play without us doing a session 0 where we're all doing character generation and getting to know you and all that. We can just get into a game. On other stuff, I've not much to say. Obviously, my time's still pretty limited as we're wrapping up my mother's estate, but it will become much freer in the coming weeks, and we get into a game and we can start building things that way. Anyway, I've whittled on for quite long enough as usual, so thank you very, very much for watching. As always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.